All right. So, college football. Today is the 26th. So, we
Two
had
six.
week 0, as they call it in college football. Everybody was excited, but it was only a little taste.
Sampler. This is tapas football.
That's right. I hate tapas. Don't say that. I loved watching. I don't care who it was. Again, from what I saw, we had 3 games. I didn't care who it was during the day. We had a little Youngstown State versus Samford. And
SAM, folks.
yeah, not
Samford.
Stanford, where Youngstown State won 45-22. Again, I don't care what it is. It was real football that mattered.
Yep.
The 2 big games outside of that, the late game was Arizona traveling to Hawaii.
Yep.
And then obviously the primetime game, Miami versus Florida in Orlando. So the Hawaii-Arizona game, so we can build the crescendo into what was Miami, Florida, if you want to say that. But I do want to touch on the other game for those that might have seen the beginning or didn't stay up late or didn't care. The final score being 45 Hawaii Rainbow Warriors over the Arizona Wildcats at 38. It's the year that a lot of people are expecting things out of Arizona's quarterback Khalil Tate. Had a very down year last year. Some people even think he might get back in the Heisman conversation. I watched a good bit of the game actually, and yeah, I don't know. The guy had 3 TDs, 2 picks, threw for 361. He also ran for another 108 on 13 carries. So that's solid. You lost to the Rainbow Warriors. I don't know. And on top of Khalil Tate, I don't know that Kevin Sumlin's a head coach. So there's that. On the flip side of the ball, Hawaii's got this McDonald kid at quarterback, really tall, has these dreadlocks. I mean, he looks like he just came off the beach catching him a tube, okay, down on the pipeline at Waikiki Beach. But he, I mean, as you see and as you've seen in the past with Hawaii quarterbacks, Timmy Chang,
Chang.
They're high powered in terms of their offense. They sling it all over the yard. So that's one of the reasons, I liked watching it. I like seeing, it has nothing to do with teams that matter, I think. Sorry for those fans of those teams. But at the end of the day, it was fun to watch. It was just fun to watch because there was a lot of high powered stuff. Now, the Bird kid, the receiver, and we will talk fantasy football and I'll talk daily fantasy. And you can play these college slates for daily fantasy. And that's a guy, like, as you go on, and I there's so much to choose from there. It is difficult, but it can be fun. If you do play college daily fantasy football, that the receiver for Hawaii, Bird, is somebody maybe to keep an eye on as the season progresses. I think the guy had like 261 and 4 TDs. Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, he was wide open on a lot of those that I saw. So don't want to go crazy on that game, but again, we're building the crescendo a little better than Youngstown State Sanford. So let's get at it. The clash that was the in-state rivalry renewed with the Florida Gators, ranked number 8 and the Miami Hurricanes, not at, because they were in Orlando.
Correct.
They
We were camping. It was Camping World.
They were doing the game day at Disney. What's that? What's that? Disney World. Going to be there in a month with the kiddies. The game itself, we'll talk about it. I've been listening to a lot of the journalists and pundits out there, and I'm in agreement in the sense that it was sloppy football. But some people, the socials allow people that are nobody just to chime in, and people were, kind of throwing hate. And I was hearing this morning, McElroy talking about, are we a society that is just we have to criticize every little thing. Like, I was just happy to see it. It was not great football. Keep in mind, it is the first game of the year. Okay?
All right, hold on. No, I got to cut you off.
Okay.
I got to cut you off.
All right.
I got to cut you off. Because before we get into all this analysis of the game, for those of you that don't know the man across the table from me, Bill Manis, he's known to go on what we might call a rant or two. And if you've ever been able to have the experience of one of those epic rants where he turns into bad boy Billy Manis.
I'm standing, and I'm a little further away from the mic on this.
Because he's got
ready to pace.
He's got to pace. He's got to pace. He's got to walk. He's got to talk. I know you want this because I watched the game with him, and I listened to it throughout the game. Bill, you have 60 seconds to discuss a topic that's very, very important to you from a rant perspective, and that is the turnover chain. Go.
Why? I mean, here's the thing. You know, I get it's motivated. These are kids. You got to motivate them, this, that, and the other. And, yeah, maybe there was a little momentum swing. And now they got the ridiculous offensive ring. I mean, man, when we saw those rings, I was like, I don't want to lose my 60 seconds. The point is this. Miami's playing Clemson. We're beating them 100-0. They get a turnover on our walk-ons. Are you going to pull the turnover chain out? Please. I liken it. I was at the game for the Odell Beckham catch. The most unbelievable catch I ever saw. There will always be a stigma on that for me, especially as a Giants fan. Why? We lost to the Cowboys. So, you know, I tie it all together. BS. It's nonsense. Get rid of that nonsense and play some football. You won't ever see a Clemson Florida State and your silly little Dora backpack, okay? Please. You're a fan, okay? And I don't like seeing their fans wearing fake chains in the crowd, supporting that nonsense. Go win football games. Go win football games. Be consistently good like that. And then if you are that good on your defense and you can beat them, then maybe we can talk about it. But again, look at Sad. They lost the game. And they got this 305 turnover chain, you know, going from one dude to the next. Just give it a rest. Play football. You've let me go longer. You didn't cut me off.
I'm not gonna. I'm entertained.
I know.
Are you not entertained?
I have nothing against with motivating these kids. They are young kids, and I have nothing against having fun. I'm a fun guy. It's like I said on Saturday night. Hicks was over here. Justin Hicks, a friend of ours, who was giving me heck. He kept saying, "Oh, well, you're no fun. You're no fun." I said, "Buddy, I'm the most fun guy you know. Look where you are right now. You at my place, hanging out, having a good time. Why? Because I'm a fun guy." But let's get down to brass taxes. You're talking about some ridiculous bling. We all know Miami is a place where there's a lot of swag and bling, and it's, you know, the Catholics versus the criminal. I mean, we know what you are. Go win some football games. And put the turnover chain away. Put the turnover rings away.
Touchdown ring.
Whatever those are. That really, their offense isn't good enough to have something like that, Pat. So,
all right.
I digress.
I have to say, I hope some of you got some enjoyment out of that because I really did that for myself so I could enjoy it. I will let me give a little tiny spin. He made fun of the Dora the Explorer backpack, which is sad to say, completely legitimate. I want to put a shout out to the Seminoles for getting their head out of their keister, and that is dead and gone because that made the turnover chain look like the greatest thing under the sun.
Look like, you know, the Grail, the Ark of the Covenant.
Yeah, it's bad. I'm not a big fan of it. I don't mind bringing out a few things, especially when you're getting it done against a rival. I will say this. It wasn't as bad. The rings for the touchdowns with the offense we saw was bad, but it wasn't as bad to me because they were in the game. They were momentum swings, but we're going to get into the ins and outs of it. But overall, not a fan, and certainly don't want to see that sucker getting pulled out when you're getting beat by 5 touchdowns or something ridiculous like that, like they do.
During the game, they put up the little stat about how many forced turnovers Miami had last year and how great their defense.
Sure.
I emphasize the word forced. Okay.
Yep.
At least the first 2 turnovers that turnover chain went around for on the defense were far but forced. That was straight.
Well, they were forced by Florida.
Yeah,
turning over their own ball.
It was straight Florida shooting themselves in the foot. And, you had a guy there that was the right place, right time. It had nothing to do with somebody punching a ball out, making a pick. You could even argue that pick at the end of the game from Felipe Franks wasn't forced. He forced the ball is what he
to
did.
Miami.
He threw it right to the guy. It wasn't like the guy made a phenomenal play on it, okay?
Yep.
Again, I'll use the. I digress. I'm getting a little hyped up about that.
We will. I will say just to prepare you for the future, because this may become a popular segment, is the Bill rant later on in the season in various different forms.
Hopefully we can get some video up and you can see it, because then you people all want to watch.
None of his shoes have any tread left on them from his pacing antics, but we will look to do that. But I give that about I'm a little surprised in some ways, but it's still early because it's week 0, so it didn't even get a number. I would put that I put that at about a 4.5 out of 10 for you on a Bill rant scale.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, I didn't find that to be one of the more intense ones. So just so you understand, it gets bigger. It gets bigger.
It gets bigger, but see, where we need to really be cognizant of it is maybe you flipping on a little voice recorder when I'm in the moment, in my element, because you put me on the spot, and I kind of knew it was coming, and I'm all good with that. But at the end of the day, it's when I just snap and I go without even being prepped.
Yes. Yeah.
It's what was it, 3 years ago when Notre Dame came to Clemson at night in that big game in the rain, and Brian Kelly walks out of the tunnel, and I froze the screen with the dumbfounded look on that fatty's face and told him to get in the bus and take his ass back to South Bend, fatty. That's really mean. But that's the way it gets. That's when that is the rant Dave speaks of. When I get just completely unhinged. It's fun. It's fun. No harm done. I think Brian Kelly's a good coach, and I respect the hell out of the Notre Dame program. But, when they're going against my Clemson Tigers, they can eat dirt.
Oh, all right. Well, good stuff. So here's
let's go into Miami, Florida.
We're gonna talk about this game, and I guess what I'm gonna ask you for, and I think we can do is let's take the game as an overview. What are the 2 or 3 takeaways for either team or the game as a whole that you had on this particular game? What did you learn?
Well, I said before, it was sloppy football. But if I'm going to give you like 3 takeaways, and I don't want to steal anything from you.
No, go ahead.
Certainly the vaunted defense, that is Miami, especially as they pumped it up before the game, and their leaders being their linebacker, Shaq Quarterman, number 56, I think he is, 55.
55.
Shaq's 55. The other one's 56. He was their senior starting linebacker, potential first-round NFL prospect. Both of them, but him too, looked like poo. I think he made a play or two towards the end of the game.
He had the recovery on the
again.
That
wasn't
turnover.
Forced.
No, but he had the recovery.
But I do think that there's a lot of improvement. I think the other thing is, and I don't want to be all on Miami. New coaching staff. I know you got to take your lumps. There was complete evidence of bad clock management by the Miami team. Whether it caused them to win or lose, I don't know, because Florida flat out was giving them the game, especially at the end. The last thing, if I'm going to give you a third one, is Felipe Franks. I don't know about him. I don't know if he's the right guy for the job in that system. Mm-hmm. I can tell you, I didn't realize this. Because maybe he's trying to live up to something that the coaches instilled in him in terms of leadership, but the jumping around with the fans in the sidelines, like, be humble, young man. Be humble. You're not there yet. You're not there, and you're not winning the game because of you. If anything, you were like, he was running around, jumping around like he was the reason that they were doing so great. He did everything to give that game away for his team.
Yep.
So, those are three things. The defense needs to come together on Miami, but I was very disappointed in the fact that the linebackers were supposed to be the leaders of that team, and they were non-existent for a lot of the game. They were just basic things, not being where they were supposed to be during a play. Tackling was awful, but that was on both sides of the ball. I kind of attribute that to first game of the year. And then the time management of the Miami coaching staff, and then Felipe Franks. Those are my three things I walk away with saying,
Definitely, I agree with you. All very, very legitimate, and certainly things that played with me. I guess what I'll say, I'll kind of play on some of those. You and I talked a little bit about the Miami linebackers, so I will. I'm going to kind of wrap that into something that was a little bit more on both sides of the team, was how they moved away from, I don't know if it was game plan or luck, but how they moved away from things that were successful for them. And I give you a couple of examples. Miami, early on in the game, the first drive, driving down the field, had a I thought a very good drive. Ended up with the points.
It was a good look.
It was a good drive. The receivers.
For a new offensive coordinator.
Yep, absolutely.
Like incoming freshman, red shirt he is, I think.
Yep.
It was a good looking first drive.
Yep. And they ran some three receiver sets to the outside and threw behind in a screen fashion, and got tremendous blocking downfield that sprung a couple of nice runs. They were good, easy passes for the quarterback to get loose.
Receivers were making some great that drive. The receivers were making awesome blocks,
and they abandoned it really after that drive. So that to me was something I saw on the coaching side.
Yeah, perplexed.
And on the Florida side, Tony was excellent in the first half, and I tried to watch a little bit of the coverage to see if they were playing him different. I even had mentioned it that they got to start bracketing him. They were losing him on plays, but he looked excellent in the first half of football.
Boy, is that kid fast.
Yeah, and it seems like they slipped from that game plan. And the good part was he was getting the ball behind the line of scrimmage and on short routes, and he was making plays. So
end arounds.
Yeah, so just didn't quite understand why I saw the coaching staffs on both teams. I definitely think the coaching staff on Miami was outmatched in this game. If you just watch the way it played, there was poor clock management at several points, but really for both teams, the timeouts. Now, granted, I also want to say this. The week 0 is a new phenomenon for us in football, in college football. So, and I believe this about week 1 traditionally, it's overreaction week. It hurts, especially when you play big rivals. I remember as a Florida State fan, we were the first team to play the Monday night college football game, the first Monday night game. And we did it for, I think, 3 straight years against Miami. And it's hard. It's a hard thing to do. The week 1 is always the overreaction because you get those big games. And then generally everybody after that plays a cupcake. And you'll get a couple of big games in week 2, but usually those teams are playing the cupcake in week 1. There is no preseason in college football. So what we came away with was the idea that there is a lot for these teams to improve upon, and both coaches said it. So I don't think it's going to be a shock. So the game planning was one
thing too.
Yeah. Seasons are not lost. Miami is not out of the ACC, obviously, because it's an out-of-conference game. But there's a lot to clean up. But I don't know that anybody's going to walk away from week 1, whether you play a powder puff or you play a big game, going to go, they know their team. You don't know your team at that point.
That's interesting you say that because, I think that college football made sure a game like this was put together in week 0. And again, you're right. We overanalyze it. It's the biggest game of the week of very few games, and the other games really are not as important
Yeah.
by any means.
Yeah.
So
I don't know how many people caught the Hawaii-Arizona game for that matter.
Everybody is all eyes on them.
Yeah.
It was pumped up all week. It was the only game. So, again, I said it earlier. We're a society that looks to nitpick.
Yeah.
But to your, statement, I think that one of the reasons ESPN, or it was on ESPN, I think one of the reasons college football tried to schedule this as a first game is because typically a lot of our big teams play a scrub the first week.
Yeah. Yeah, there's probably 3 or 4. I mean, if you really look,
so
there's 3 or 4 big games.
And on the regular, I mean, even last year, Clemson's first game was Furman, and then we went to College Station and played A&M. Now, this year it's different. Not that Tech is phenomenal, but it's a conference game. My point is this. I feel like they're trying to get some interest and schedule, a better matchup at the beginning of the week, not just to get excitement, but you can't tell what you've got when you play Furman. So
no.
at least there's a lot of cleaning up to, but they do know something. I mean, Miami, they've already re-ranked the AP poll, and Miami's in at 24, and they dropped Florida from 8 to 9.
Yeah, who dropped Auburn? Jumping?
I don't know if it was AP, but they re-ranked the poll. I saw it this morning, one of the polls, and Auburn jumped Florida.
Yeah, and the truth is, we don't know jack about either team because not only was it the first game of the season for them, nobody else played. So you can't make these comparisons. Preseason polls, you can argue them all you want, but all they are is preseason polls. It's like the power list for the NFL. Nobody knows. So again, everybody needs to relax. But besides the coaching, watching the game plan, let's just say for those not in the Miami fold or the Florida fold, it was an entertaining game. Yeah. It definitely was entertaining.
There were a lot of storylines.
Yes, definitely.
You got new coach, new staff, new D coordinator at Florida with Grantham. You got Florida coming in preseason ranked number 8, Miami not at all. You got the Felipe Franks story on both sides of the ball. Jaron Williams being the Tate Martell kid that transferred from Ohio State, losing the job. There was talk all leading up to the week that he may be seen at wide receiver. He comes out in pregame warmups with wide receiver gloves, but he's taking snaps
warming up
as quarterback. You see him come into the game.
He played quite a few snaps. Didn't get the ball, but he played quite a few snaps.
A role for this kid specifically.
Yeah, I think they don't want to lose him. So
there was that we talked this about the game. For Miami, their starting cornerback DJ Ivey was out.
Yep, he was an orange
because it was a suspension, and so behind him they had Trajan Bandy and the Al Blades kid, which I don't know.
Well, they were the projected starters. Bandy was a starter. Blades is an or with Ivy. So
yes.
So they were those were their 2 guys with game experience, and then behind that was a couple of freshmen.
Right.
I will say that I was expecting that to come into play. I didn't feel like that played a big role in the game. I would say some other things that I noticed about the game. A couple other takeaways. I think Florida's defensive front, probably their front 7, was pretty solid in the game. I didn't find them to be spectacular.
No, number 92, Jabari Zuniga is their big D end, and just like Quarterman on the Miami side, I didn't really feel like he affected the game. And if he is like their primetime edge DN, like he's a speed type guy, big and I didn't see him changing the game as much as I felt like he should, because he's supposed to be that guy.
I think I will say this. I think Williams at quarterback for Miami, he played well for the circumstances that he was brought into, and Diaz chimed in on that after the game. Some things, I would say the thing they most need to work on with that kid right out of the gate, given the fact that their offensive line is severely challenged. I mean, someone at Florida State made the comment, and I don't think it's accurate, but what did we trade them our offensive line for this game? But you got to remember, there's a lot of young guys, and they were playing a pretty significant front.
It looked rough sometimes.
Yeah, they did. They look rough.
There.
But they've got to get Williams to learn to throw the ball away. What I took from Miami was defensively and offensively, the discipline was lacking. And I'll give you some examples. I think what should have gotten a much bigger storyline, after, and I'm kind of skipping to the end here, but after Felipe Franks threw that WTF interception, which
And then
is
they
to me
flashed
is
to Steve Spurrier in the stands with a look like, oh my goodness, here comes the visor.
which is on our Facebook page. If you have not seen it, hysterical. As a Steve Spurrier hater from Florida State, I said to Bill right away, I go, that's a visor throw.
And then I posted it. Oh,
So-
he's such a character.
So anyway, kind of going to that, but what people missed out on was they made a game-changing play. That was Miami's chance to win the game, and lost in all that is an immediate 15-yard penalty for excessive celebration. And I get it, but I think I go back to what Bill's turnover chain thing is. When you're focused on those little things and you make them bigger things than they are, you get overreaction. And that took them from what I think they were around the 20, a little outside the 20 when they got the interception.
Yep.
They ended up out of the 40.
Field almost.
And then they got the next
Then it
play
was
they
like-
got the clipping penalty.
Yeah,
And
they had tons of silly mistake delays of game. There was an illegal substitution, and that's on the coaching, man.
it is
With a young quarterback like that, the first game against an opponent like that, the coaching should have had a complete map for the entire offensive game.
Yeah. Now, the clipping I can kind of understand. I mean, it's a coachable mistake because if you've got a strong offensive line, you know not to engage a guy low while someone's engaging him high. But that's some of the youth of that offensive line. But the reality is you're talking about putting your quarterback in a good situation. And the thing about it was they took a quarterback after pushing him back 15 yards for antics. They went and turned around and then put him in 1st and 25. Now they're on their side of the field. They should have been rubbing on the red zone, and they're on their side of the field. And that, to me, was what really lost the game. I understand they couldn't have won it with a field goal, and they were going to have to punch it in. But all of a sudden, the clock started to become a problem, and Miami was terrible on long downs. They were terrible in the game. And so to put yourself in that position,
I think they had one play with a draw play to that DJ Dallas kid on a 3rd and long that he took off late in the game.
That wasn't that also a direct snap? That was two. They did two
It might
direct
have been,
snaps
yeah.
where he
It
got
might
big
have been.
carries.
Yeah, it might have been a direct snap.
So
Not necessarily a wildcat because
Yeah.
I think the quarterback was back there, but it was a direct snap.
So I think kind of piggybacking on Bill's thoughts is, it was a game where, like I said, there's no preseason. Well, there's no preseason for the coaches either. I think, clean up things for the coaching staff. I thought in the first drive, I thought Manny Diaz and the offensive coordinator, they had a good game plan, moving the ball downfield the way they did.
But it ended in a field goal.
Yeah.
I mean, they couldn't punch it in.
Right, but still, the fact is you pushed the ball downfield against Miami's defense. They were totally on their heels. Or Florida's defense. I hate them both, so I spurt out whichever one I don't like.
Correct.
But that's something that I saw. And then I guess, kind of my final wrap on all of this that I took away from the game was that I will still say I don't know what these teams are yet. So I want to reiterate that point. I certainly was hoping as an ACC team to see Miami make that move just because it would have helped our conference. I thought the game was competitive. It did. It certainly rung them up into the standings.
Adjustment in the poll is one thing, but I do think that it's the first game. I did read more than they did play a scrub. I mean, I don't think Florida's as good as their 8 ranking. They're going to have a lot of trouble this year having to play LSU and Georgia. Don't look past Missouri. Don't look past South Carolina. I mean, they're going to have some trouble, man. No. And I do think that Miami could be in the top 25.
Yeah, some things you probably hoped for in that game. If you're Florida, you hope for some basics. You hope to see your defensive front control the game, which I think they did a decent job for a first game. So I'm not ready to go. It's overrated.
The stigma there is what you said earlier. You're talking about a Miami O-line that wasn't that great. They're going to have problems when they run into SEC offensive lines that are good.
Yeah,
but
they didn't get to the quarterback probably as much as you would have expected, but they were pushing the line back and they were changing the vision for Williams. So there was something there. The other part I think you really wanted to see a playmaker come out, and I think you saw that with Tony as probably the front line on that. And then I'd say the third thing you wanted to see Franks take that next step. And I would definitely say that, not that it can't happen, but it didn't happen.
It didn't happen. I didn't think that. I thought the running game of Florida was better. I mean, the Pirine kid was okay last year.
Yep.
I didn't think it looked that great. I think it looked like it took a step back. I was expecting, especially with the whole thing with Franks, I thought that Mullen would have drawn up some good run plays to mix it up, and they threw the ball more in the game than they ran.
And Miami, or excuse me, Florida, actually, in this sense, I give Mullen some credit. There was one I didn't agree with, though it worked. I thought he was aggressive in his play calling. You can see that on the fourth down. Certainly the punt play, I thought it was a little early for some of that, but it worked.
Right. So those of you that did or did not see it, so Miami marches down the field with the first drive. Good drive.
Gets in the red zone.
A field goal. Yep. Florida gets the ball. They go 3 and out. They fake punt it, and
he runs
the
for
punter
it.
Kid gets the first down, and then the very next play, it was a screen pass to that stud Tony kid who took it to the house for a 66-yard TD, and a lot of that. He wasn't wide open. He made some
people miss,
but there was some bad tackling on that. Bad, and that went throughout the game. I mean, that's it is the first game, but those boys are in practice this week doing Oklahoma drills.
Yeah. Well, so certainly this is why my big thing is you don't know yet is I did see a lot of things like things that were mentioned, clock management, bad tackling. These are things you expect to be a potential problem for any team coming into a first game, especially in a somewhat contested game. And so we saw that. But the point is, those are things that can clean up.
Yeah,
you can clean up.
But the other thing you mentioned, Felipe Franks, you'd expect to see better, man. I mean, they ended up scoring there halfway through the first quarter at 7-3. I think they went, I don't know if it was 3 and out, but Florida gets the ball back. They're driving. They're literally about to score, and Franks fumbles the ball, and Miami recovers. I mean, they could have almost put it to bed right there the way it was looking.
Yeah, poor decision on the read.
14-3.
Yep.
He makes he holds on too long, tries to pull it, doesn't make a decision, and that's kind of where it's going. Like, shouldn't this guy by this time be able to make that decision, not have that problem? But he did, and it's like, man, this is our starter. They had the pregame story about how he's like, I didn't like getting booed in my own stadium. Buddy, be ready, because I don't care that you won that game. The first home game, you're going to get some boos in the swamp.
Well, certainly if you don't start out well, I agree. Yeah, I think that's the thing that's probably more alarming to me, the most alarming if I'm a Florida fan, because it's not something you clean up quickly. It's not something like, I'm trying to learn to get the flow of the game. His decision making was questionable many times.
And the Williams kid is young, has a lot to improve on. You made a great point when we were chatting before the game. Is Miami making a poor decision starting him?
Yep.
Because if he does bad, then what? At least if they had started N'Kosi Perry and it wasn't very good last year and it wasn't good again this year, well, then okay. Then you move on to the new kids and you give him his lumps. But if the thing is he didn't do that, but now he doesn't go through his progressions as a young quarterback. He looks at 1 or 2 and then that's about it.
Yep.
But that's something that he can learn. Hopefully the offensive line will get better so it can give him more time to do things like that. And to your point earlier, the offensive coordinator needs to draw up plays that gets the ball out of his hand quickly, give the kid confidence, extended run plays, so to speak.
Yep.
So there's things to work on. You look at the 2 quarterbacks, you're like, okay, feeling good about Williams. Felipe Franks, uh-oh.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. I would say on the Miami game, if I'm going to look at the things, like I do believe they've got something to work with Williams. The mistakes that he made, they got to get him to throw the ball away, which, you got to work on that with that kid. He holds the ball too much. They didn't give him a whole lot of reads, I noticed. He's the kind of guy I probably would have cut the field in half and given him 2 reads and then maybe let him run, but I didn't see a lot of that. Where I am really concerned is on the defensive side, and particularly at the shining spot, which is the linebackers. I was baffled by this, and I mentioned it early in the game as we were watching it, and I watched it happen.
This is why I was hoping I wasn't stealing your thunder.
No.
But I saw the same thing you saw.
It just, when you've got 2 guys like Quarterman and Pinckney, who are studs and supposed to be leaders, the thing I couldn't figure out in the game plan was these guys were 2 steps forward and stopping on half the plays. Now
they looked looked lost as veterans and leaders. There was times that they didn't know where they should be.
Right. And so when I saw that, and here was the thing that was happening is, in today's college football with some of the spread it out concepts, the idea that you're rarely playing your base defense. It's the same. It's moving that way in the pros. You're playing more in a nickel. Your linebackers got to do one of 2 things. They either have to create chaos in the passing game through either moving to the line and creating havoc in the backfield, or they have to be dropping back and creating havoc in the passing lanes. They were in between all game, and the few times they blitzed them, those 2 guys couldn't shed a block to save their lives. They were getting, they were waiting for the guards and the centers to step out on them, and then there was no speed to it, so they weren't engaging them well. And that, to me, if that's going to be the centerpiece of your defense, that scares me, because they were getting beat over the top because they weren't clogging the passing lanes.
When Florida made plays in that area of the field, that short linebacker area within the 10 yards, somebody get a ball and just go.
Yep.
They would show the replay, and you'd see Miami's linebackers sitting there almost dumbfounded, and the Florida Gator blue, there'd be no blue jerseys around them.
Yep.
It's like they were it's like, dude, cover somebody.
Yeah, and again, I don't know if that's game plan or a lack of concentration. To me, it looked more like game plan, because especially that 2 steps forward and stop, almost like waiting for the run to come to you, which is a mistake when you got linemen going to the second level. That's the things I saw. So between Felipe Franks and Miami's linebackers, which that was the hope that we'd find out about, all the rest having some level of unknown. Again, I'm not against Florida's defensive front. Could they have done more? I would have expected, I don't even want to say more blitzing. I would expect more penetration that was cleaner, just given the quarterback situation, but it wasn't. Some other things I saw.
Penetration.
Some other things I saw. Florida's secondary looks like it can be out pushed around, out physical. I don't know what the word I'm looking for is. They could be beat up a little bit. Like they weren't strong at the point of attack, which goes back to Miami's receivers pushing them around in the short passing game, and in turn in some of those bigger runs. That was one thing I saw. And I got to say, though, I was on a Miami side. I was impressed with their secondary and how they handled it. It sounded like coming to the game that might be a challenge for them. Mm-hmm. I thought they were very physical.
Bandy looked good, man.
Who came up and made the stick on that third down? Was that
Bandy?
I mean,
he looked good.
They hit well.
I did see Blades getting highlighted in a few plays, but Bandy looked good.
So all in all, I will say entertaining game. Game.
We were excited for it. I had goosebumps all day, and it delivered for me.
Yeah.
It was college football. The whole day delivered. Now, yeah!
I think he's referring to Thursday. So I will say this, entertaining. I think both teams showed me something. I think both teams also gave me a little bit of ooh as well, which, again, is to be expected to some degree.
As a Florida fan, that should have made you feel. A Florida State fan, that should have made you feel good.
Yeah, I mean, well, when you want both teams to lose and it's impossible, it just doesn't work out. But at the same time, I watched it. I watched it from especially being the first game, from a football enjoyment standpoint, and I will say the game was entertaining. The turnovers, I will say, like Bill said, there was not a lot of forced turnovers. They were unforced errors, and Miami's penalties were horrid in the game. Again, things that they're going to have to clean up fast.
But they can. I mean,
yes,
those
but
are
they can.
coachable things.
Right.
So they're, to a certain extent, it's good that happened.
Yeah, yeah. So I think that's really what you saw in the games. I am. If I saw two guys that I looked at, I would say Tony, definitely for Florida from an offensive standpoint, certainly would get my attention. On Miami's side, they were direct snap plays, but I'd really like to see them run. What's his name? The
Dallas.
13 Dallas. Yes, Dallas. Excuse me.
Dallas.
DJ Dallas.
He looked good.
Like to see him run DJ Dallas a little bit more. You got to soften up the inside of anybody's defensive line because I think the MO right now, until Williams proves otherwise, is going to be pressure him until he makes a mistake. I thought he controlled the mistakes to a degree. Like, I really do. I think he did a good job of that, but he didn't also show me that ability. They did not, and we talked about this as well in the game, they did not try to push the ball downfield.
No.
At
But
all in the game.
You know, I mean, to your point, there were a few plays where he was scrambling, he was looking, and I appreciate, a young kid like that keeping his eyes downfield. But he had room to throw the ball away, and he decided just to run out of bounds and take, whether it's a 1 yard loss or he took 3, 4, 5, he'd take a loss, and I don't understand that.
Miami has to figure out a downfield weapon quickly with him. They got to figure out a way whether they're going to, max protect and find a guy that can win one-on-one on the outside. They've got to do something to soften up the field in the long term. So that's something they really need to discover. Florida, I think the answer is going to be, can they get big leads on some of these teams? Their defense is good, but it's Felipe Franks. There's no other way around it. That guy has got to take a step forward.
He's not going to win them anything. That's what I saw. He's not going to win them, and part of it is his attitude. I didn't see a good attitude. Again, look, if you were the reason they were winning, I mean, you were the reason you tried to give it to him single-handedly, pal. Be humble, young man. I didn't feel this way about Felipe. I didn't feel any type of way about Felipe Franks. I certainly didn't think he was awesome, but in the past, it's like, okay, he's serviceable. If you got a good coach who's an offensive-minded guy and did great things with, I think lesser talent at Mississippi State, and so I thought, maybe Mullen, he seemed to be pretty positive about Franks. All right.
I think Mullen is probably going to realize, if I could take something away, and I'm probably reaching a little bit, but he's going to have to game plan within the skill set he's got. It's not a guy you're going to open up the playbook for and he's going to go figure it out. I think I took that from it. Yeah. So he's going to have to play within his skill set. And again, I will say the interception at the end was completely inexcusable. I mean, there wasn't a Florida guy within 5 yards of the ball, and I couldn't figure it out. So if he's going to be a quarterback that's going to have those moments like that, it's going to be a challenge. Florida's defense is going to have to win them a lot of games. I just believe. And because I think if you're going to make it short and intermediate passes and bring the ball closer to the line of scrimmage, eventually guys defenses are going to play to that. And so you're going to have to figure that out. And he did, I will say, he threw a very nice ball in the long touchdown pass that got him the lead and won him the game. But, you can't come right back in after that and do what he did. There's just no reason. Not even really sure about the play call in and of itself, but there was more. I mean, but when the guy passes the ball like that, you're like, what
it should
the hell?
Been a run anyways, but
yeah.
All right, well, good. Well, this is a good week 0. We're gonna move to hopefully have this and some of the ones we did at the end of last week up before we get rocking and rolling week 1, but we will have another conversation previewing week 1, and we'll do it before the Clemson game. Maybe we'll do it on Thursday. But it was good talk, so we look forward to that. Have a great day.